is intended to do, it's no wonder that our people are not bilingual. It's no wonder that only 17% of Anglophones are bilingual, and out of the 17%, how many of them truly meet the standards required by the government in a lot of the job postings that are out there. I've contended for many years, and I continue to contend that I think that standard is too high. I think there has to be a more balanced approach when we come to hiring as it relates to bilingualism. But we've spent 50 years, millions of dollars to try to get this right. And we failed. There's no question. Nobody can deny that. We failed because rather than bringing the two cultures together, and rather than having French and English together, governments, liberal and conservative alike, have spent decades dividing the two cultures. We have separate school buses, we have separate schools, we have separate hospitals, we have separate daycares now, designated French, designated English, and then we sit back and we wonder to ourselves, why are we not bilingual? Well, I remember here not too long ago that there was a big kerfuffle in this province over school buses. And I can tell you, you could talk to the vast majority of people in New Brunswick, French and English alike, that would tell you it is absolutely ridiculous that we do not allow French and English children to travel on the same bus. I mean, the previous government, the Liberal government, took it to court. I believe when they realized they couldn't win it, they pulled it from the court. This division continues, this duality continues, costing millions of dollars every year, not creating the outcome that I believe Louis J. Robichaud wanted when he introduced bilingualism to begin with. I believe he would be very dissatisfied to see what's going on in this province today in terms of language and the ability to speak a second language. Matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, almost 20 years ago, in January of 2000, there was a study done by the University of Toronto professor Jim Cummings. He did a report titled Immersion Education for the Millennium. In the report, Mr. Cummings stated, the professor, and I'll quote, "The differences between students' receptive and expressive skills can be understood in the context of the lack of interaction with native Francophone students who attend a separate French language system." It's clear. The reason why European countries speak multiple languages is because they don't divide their people. Their people work together. They're educated together. They travel together. I mean, what reasonable person can explain to me how a French bus can pick up a handful of French children in rural areas, drive them to school, and right behind it, an English bus come up, pick up students and drive them to school. And then when the school day ends, they get off at the same bus stop and they go and play in the same playground, they play in the same hockey team, they play in the same baseball team. Society as a whole, people as a whole, understand the importance of working together. But government doesn't. Government has this odd fascination with silos and separation, division, and duality. That's what we are fighting against as a party and what we will continue to fight against. And that gets back to French immersion. So it's bad enough that we separate our cultures, but then what we turn around and do is we take our Anglophone kids and we even separate them. Rather than giving all Anglophone children a right and an opportunity to learn French, we instead take the elite of our Anglophone kids, put them in these special classes called immersion, where we have streaming, where we have more resources, where we have smaller classes. So we're separating classes in the school and we're separating classes in society when they get out of school, which is why we have a failure when it comes to educating our children, which is why we have a failure when it comes to bilingualism in New Brunswick. I hear everybody say how New Brunswick is a bilingual province, and it may be an illegal concept, but in reality, we failed. Now, people across the aisle, I'm sure, can attack us, and they have, on our position on this, say all kinds of things. I've read it all and I've heard it all. But one thing I know is that at the end of the day, we can't keep doing failed things and expect to get success out of that. We have to change the way we're doing things. We have to change the way we're educating our people. We have to change the way we separate our people. We have to end duality, which is what I've been saying. Saving money, I mean, we spend millions of dollars separating, and we don't have enough money for health care. We don't have enough money for education. We don't have enough money for infrastructure. We tax and tax and tax. And what do we get in the end? We get 17% of an Anglophone population that's bilingual. Probably of that 17%, most of it wouldn't meet the standards of job requirements by the provincial government. It's just a mess. It's complete failure. So if I have to be the lone voice in this House to say that bilingualism as it is today is not working, it's failed, then I will say that. Because I know the majority of people in this province, French and English alike, understand it. But I will tell you that I understand the Minister of Education's position. I understand the government's positions. I've sat with the NBTA. I've sat with organization, teachers alike, that say it was a political move, a ridiculous move, to go from grade 3 to grade 1. And let's just look at the context of that, shall we? At a time when language tensions are at their peak, at a time when you had a former language commissioner that's going on a witch hunt for Anglophones, at a time when the whole system is just at its peak of tension, instead of the previous government hitting it head on, what they do is they come up with this crazy idea of French immersion going from grade 3 to grade 1. They create a Celtic Affairs minister. They do all these ridiculous things to try to ease language tensions. It's not going to work until you get to the heart of the issue. And the heart of the issue is you have to stop dividing people. You have to bring people together. I'm very proud, Mr. Speaker, to be from a small community like Minto. Coal mining capital of Atlantic Canada, probably even the Northeast at one point. And I can tell you, when those coal mines were operating, we had French, we had English, we had Dutch, we had German, we had Italian. We had a multicultural community. They worked in the mines, they come out of the mines, they learned each other's languages, they learned each other's cultures. To this day, you can see the diversity of people in my little community. So, we can do it in a small scale. It flows organically. But when you come to a province, you have all these interest groups, all these special interest groups that want something. They want their piece of the pie. And what happens is nobody gets anything because everything becomes a failure. So I understand the government's position in not changing it. I disagree, but I understand. What I hope in the end is that the immersion program in and of itself, grade 3 or grade 1, makes no difference. The immersion program of itself is frankly moved into a program that allows all kids to learn a second language, not shuttling them into special classes in the Anglophone schools. What can we do to end duality, bring our cultures together, give everybody the opportunity to learn from one another, rather than this constant separation that we get from consecutive governments keeping our people separate? I have lots more I can say on this, Mr. Speaker, but out of respect for the member of Kent North, who was gracious enough to let me go ahead here, I'm going to end my statement, and thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Le député de Kent North.
Member for Kent North. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to be clear, I have 15 minutes on the clock, 10 minutes. Until 10, okay. Thank you. Well, thank you. It pains me, Mr. Speaker. It hurts me to see that after 50 years, we still don't understand what duality is.
And I think one thing that I'm always appalled about in this house is that I know we don't all understand both official languages, but we're not even wearing our earpieces. We're not even listening to each other. We're not even talking. We're not even really wanting to learn what the other side is. I will admit, Mr. President, there is a problem. There is a huge problem. After 50 years, it is true. We are not there yet. We are not there helping people that do want to become bilingual. And we're not even, after 50 years, we were not even able to communicate correctly what all of this was about. Francophones didn't communicate very well what they were looking for, I think. And Anglophones sometimes didn't necessarily maybe want to try to understand what the minority Francophones were asking for. So it's a big kerfuffle. I am 100% with that. Yes, it is. We have made great advances, but it's still a kerfuffle. Yeah, I don't know if that's how you say the word, but that's how I'm kerfuffle. Thank you. So, yes, we all live in New Brunswick, Mr. President. We all live in New Brunswick. You know what gets us together is some of us live in rural regions. We're rural. Some of us live in urban regions. They're urban. Some of us, jobs are scarce everywhere. We have a lot of challenges. But one of the challenges we don't have in New Brunswick is letting people be who they are. Being a francophone, I'm not a francophone. Je suis un Acadien.
I'm an Acadian. It's my culture. It's inside. It's who I am.
It's everything that was taught to me. It's the stuff I eat. It's true. It's the stuff I eat. It's the TV shows I watch. It's the radios. It's the books I read. It's who I am. It is my identity, yes. And I have a lot of friends from a bunch of different other parts of the world that live here in New Brunswick, and that we do have in common. We live in New Brunswick. But some of my friends don't listen to the same TV shows as I do. Some of my colleagues don't listen to the same TV. We work together. David turned around a while ago. Sorry, the member from Fredericton South turned around a while ago and said, you know, are these differences dividing us? No, they're not dividing us. There's a lot of other things we could be working on except attacking a minority group for being who they are. Segregation would be if the minority group didn't want to be in another school system. I've told this story in the house before. I played hockey when I was young. And I was on a hockey team where one person couldn't speak French. We talked English all year. That's a reality. It's a reality. Assimilation for a minority is a reality. It's a true thing. I mean, all studies show that if I was at an announcement today in Elsipogtog in my riding, the people in Elsipogtog, some still speak Mi'kmaq, but not much. You know why? because we've assimilated. We've forced these people into structures that are assimilating and that took away language and parts of their culture. And the people in Elsipogtog are some resilient. They are some resilient because they are being able to keep that language. And I got up in the house and talked about Dr. Mildred Malia. And it's because of people like her that people were able to keep that language. Now, when I said there's a problem, there is. Francophones are not looking to keep a language. Bilingualism is not a culture. Bilingualism is a societal project of having many different cultures living together peacefully. And yeah, I see the time. Peacefully together, and work on common challenges. I have 3 minutes 36, right? Okay, I'm just making sure.
33 now.
So I do have a sub-amendment to do, and I will do it when there is a little bit time. So where I'm going with this is that community also must be included in learning languages. Not only learning languages, learning the other people's cultures. And we're different. That's all right. You know what? You could be queer. You could be of a different race, of a different religion. We're all different. That's awesome. I want to get to know you better and work on common challenges. But let me be who I am. And bilingualism, yes, in a state where everyone should be able to be who they are, duality is not separating us. It's building us. Where the problem is that in our families, in our communities, we're not doing that extra mile. In communities, why don't we have a public television in New Brunswick? Why don't we have a public television with programming in both official languages where kids and adults could be listening to different shows and learning and very educational stuff? Why don't we have, and I see it in my riding in Rexton, there's a lot of community events where it's done in French, and other communities where it's done even in Mi'kmaq, when I go in Elsipogtog. Our public libraries. We have a system of public libraries. Incredible. I bring my kid in the public library, and I love it. He runs around, gets books. He doesn't know which one's English, which one's French. He brings a bunch of books, and we bring him home. Why don't we listen to radio shows in the other language? But Mr. President, schools, it's not segregation. The Francophone minority has asked for that, to be able to keep their own culture, to be able to keep their identity, the base, les racines, the roots of what you are. So, Mr. President, I'd like to move a sub-amendment to motion 39, moved by myself, the member of Kent North, and seconded by the member of Memramcook Tantramar. I talk fast, so it doesn't take me time. I move that the amendment to motion 39 be amended by deleting that any decision on the entry point of French immersion be made within the context of a broader discussion on and replacing it with the following: to maintain the entry point of French immersion no later than grade 1 and engage in a broader discussion on.